Ohio State isn't looking for a superhero, but it does want a quarterback who can run the football a little bit. That's where snap judgments will begin after practice number 5 in training camp for Ohio State. That's Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. To a man, especially with that top group, a lot of conversation, Bill, about those quarterbacks needing to be able to run the football for this offense to function the way Chip Kelly and Ryan Day want.
Yeah, I think 2 things as part of that conversation stuck out to me today. One was Chip Kelly telling us that all these guys can really run. Every quarterback in the room topped out at least 20 miles per hour during speed training in the summer, and Will Howard was the fastest at 22 miles per hour.
I would not have guessed that.
Big Cat running 22 miles per hour. But I actually thought maybe the more interesting thing today was, I don't know the right way to characterize it, but I would say that when Will Howard first got here, he tried to get in front a little bit of some conversation about his running ability, I think in a way to say hey, I'm coming here to develop as a passer. I want to showcase that part of my game. And it's not that he has changed his mind on that, but today he was I'm going to run the football. This is part of my game. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to embrace it. It's a strength of mine. We need it for this offense. So that was good to hear. I guess I was halfway concerned we were going to go down the I'm not a running back road with Will Howard. And I don't think we're going to go there. He seems very much eager to take on that role within this offense.
Yeah, we won't be hearing any similar press conferences like C.J. Stroud's famous one after Nebraska, which, again, he was right, and you can understand, but Will Howard's approach is very different.
And it should be different, but also he seems so much more confident as a passer of the football right now than he did when he got here. And this is a kid who, he said, he's never had the depth of coaching that he's gotten at Ohio State, and you can just tell he's extremely comfortable. I think the thing that stood out to me today about all the quarterbacks, even down the list to Lincoln Keenholz, Aaron Nolan, and Julian Saying, everyone's pretty confident about where they are right now. And it doesn't seem like a group that you have a major divide between I'm going to be the starter and everyone else saying, oh, I'm just here to hold a clipboard.
Even when someone is trying to foment dissension among the ranks by asking them what they do better than everybody else.
Which is a messed up thing to do.
Who would do such a thing?
I did that.
Oh.
And I'm
joking, by the way.
No, I wanted to see if I would get the same answers that I already had in my head. And I pretty much did, which was, I think, we talked about it last week, but everyone has a different elite trait. And so I asked Chip Kelly, Ryan Day in recruiting always talks about he wants an elite characteristic. What's their one thing? And
he says extraordinary.
Sure, extraordinary
trait.
I asked Evan Brown. He said his leadership. I asked Will Howard. He said his experience. I asked Julian Saying. He said his
hair.
His hair is great. That is California cool. He said it's the way he processes things. He thinks he does that. Lincoln Keenholz, just athleticism and the way he can move around the pocket. Aaron Nolan was the only one that didn't give a hard answer. And I think that's fine and understandable for a kid that understands he's 5 on the depth chart and wanting to. He said, I'm just trying. It ended up being that his elite trait was being worried about himself and not other people, which is not a bad thing in this context. It's not he's running his own race. And to understand that
Single-minded focus.
Right, but to understand that right now is fairly mature for, a player who was Georgia Player of the Year 2 years ago. To say, hey, I'm not actually comparing myself to anybody else, I think is good. So overall, just the confidence of the group and bordering a little bit on cocksureness when it's dealing, especially with Devin Brown and Will Howard. Cocksurety. I think that's important. Will Howard said he doesn't need to be a hero, but he needs to be a badass. If that, for
this different
team.
Things. Yeah.
He needs to be that guy.
Yeah.
After you walked away from asking Devin Brown that question, I said, Devin, Berm wanted you to say that you throw the best deep ball, and you didn't do it. And then I was we had a little bit of a conversation about that, and his philosophy about taking those chances or shots, not chances, because he doesn't view them as a risk. If he gets the look that he wants, he's not afraid to throw it down the field. I think Will Howard was not asked to compare those things directly, but he said that one thing he needed to keep working on was pushing the ball down the field. And I think I talked to Will a little bit on the side after that.
I talked to Will on the side a little bit before that. So let's see what he said.
And he said, even when it comes to the competition, that's making me better than Kansas State. It's more competition, it's more coaching, it's more strength staff support. I think when Devin Brown has hit some of these throws, thinking of one on Friday to Jeremiah, the one on Bryson Rogers to end that practice, we've seen Devin Brown do that in almost every practice this year. Yeah. I think that's going to plant the seed if the other parts are trending towards Will Howard and he wants to be the starting quarterback, and he's thinking, well, if that other guy is actually having a lot of success taking these shots, that's sort of the iron sharpening iron for the passers.
Yeah. Chip Kelly, when I asked him about the traits, and he said Devin Brown's arm strength and his ability to push the ball down the field. So like it was where I thought it was going. I asked Will Howard as a passer because, without knocking his players at Kansas State, I said, how much easier is this? And he said that he feels way more confident because throwing the ball downfield now, even a 50-50 ball to Jeremiah Smith is a good decision.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that he didn't ever have in his mind before.
An 80-20 ball might be a good decision.
Right. So like
any ball whatsoever.
So, well, the idea, I mean, he's never had those types of receivers, and he's like, yeah, this is way easier. I can take more shots. I can take more risks, and I'm not going to be yelled at because I'm throwing, to a guy that is going to win almost every time. So
yeah, no, I Will said, and it's a combination, I think, of what he's done here and what he did kind of on his own with his quarterback trainers, that he just feels like he's throwing the ball a lot more confidently. And that's clear if you're out here watching practice. I think that much is apparent. I did like the spin that Chip Kelly put on that, though, which was it's not merely a physical thing. Like, Will is stronger and he's throwing the ball harder, I think. But knowing the offense, understanding the timing, knowing the spacing, trusting the receivers a lot more, I just think the ball comes out quicker. And that was an area where I thought he looked behind and somewhat significantly at times in the spring. And now I almost feel like he's the best out here at times doing that stuff. Julian Sayin is flashing in that regard too. Devin Brown obviously knows the offense very well, but if there was like any ground to make up there, it feels like Will has done that, and now he's just kind of like building on top of that. Like whatever catch up he had to do, and I think he did have to do probably more than we perhaps gave credit to when he first got here. I think he's done that, and now it's just like, okay, how do I take this thing and run with it?
Would you like another off-mic bit of insight on that?
I would love it, yeah.
I asked Will whether he was actually throwing with more velocity or if it was better knowledge of the offense and being able to get the football out on time. And he said, well, yes, it's a little bit of a combination of both because physically I'm in better shape. But then he did like a demonstration where he was like, I'd get to my back foot and then be like, uh-oh, that's not the right read. And then he would kind of throw off rhythm and off platform. And he said that through 5 practices, when we're seeing more velocity, which Ryan Day has talked about, Chip Kelly's talked about, we felt like we noticed that. He said, well, it's, I think, more frequently actually being able to drive off the back foot and know that I've already processed it correctly. Yep. So it is a combination of both things. You're right about that.
Yeah, I makes sense, right? Like I think it's he just looks very different. So it's easy to grab onto, like, wow, he put in a lot of work. He's really rifling that big time. But it is more, I think,
chucking it all over the yard.
Chucking it all over the yard. It's a lot more confidence and just like understanding where guys are going to be and understanding the defense too, and knowing probably these DBs are really good, so you don't get it there fast, it's going to get picked off.
It's going to be a problem, yeah.
But that's also something that Will Howard specifically mentioned. Yeah. Like, there's times when it's frustrating in practice because you think that you're doing things right and you're not completing passes, and then you realize, oh, we're not going to be playing against these guys on Saturdays, and so that's okay. So it's a confident group.
I do think that that's why it's significant when they have plays like Devin Brown to Bryson Rodgers on Friday, because they're not going to win the majority of these reps against this secondary. So when they get examples of like, you can execute and still do it against the best defense in the country or the best secondary in the country, that should carry more weight for them. I do think like there's going to be days in these scrimmages where the defense just bottles it up, and the natural tendency is like, gosh, is this offense going to be any good? If they win 3 out of 10, like that's a pretty good sign in my opinion.
Yeah, because we saw plenty of times where they won 0 out of 10 and 0 out of 100 sometimes. It felt like because of how good this defense is. Like I feel like we've seen a fair amount of back and forth, which is really encouraging. And I also like to, like Devin having the confidence to throw that ball that we saw him throw to Bryson Rodgers, and his explanation of Berm, which was the safety's back was turned, so the receiver was open. It didn't matter that the safety's back was turned, almost stride for stride with the receiver. His back was turned, so Devin thought it was open. Like the confidence to rip that throw, I think can have a trickle-down effect on the entire room. Like you see one guy who's willing to project that kind of confidence in his own ability and his teammates' ability and make a pretty, I think, high degree of difficulty throw. Maybe Will Howard comes out and wants to do it the next time, or Julian Sayin or Aaron Nolan, anybody. Like I think those are kind of like those subtle ways that these guys are continue to push each other.
And that's one part of the offense. I mean, we're talking quarterbacks because that's what we got to talk to today, but you have to think about all of the parts that are a piece of this quarterback play and how that pertains to the offense. But then there's still maybe, the best 2 running backs in the country on the same team. And so like there's reason for these guys to be confident. Chip Kelly, you can kind of tell like he's enjoying.
Seems a little giddy.
Just tinkering with these things. So it's you know, it feels like all the pieces are there, moving in the right direction.
You know who else I thought was Giddy Berm? Like Lincoln Kienholz, I think really likes what is being asked of the quarterbacks in the run game here. That it's a weird thing because like Ryan Day is still here. He's influenced by his mentor, Chip Kelly. They've worked together previously and for a long time. But it's almost like everyone is suggesting in some ways that this offensive system is like pretty dramatically different for the quarterbacks than a year ago.
I don't know that the system is altogether different. It's just the implementation of certain pieces.
I think philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, hey, if you have 5 yards in front of you, go take it. Don't, you know, it's hard to argue with the success Ryan Day's offenses have had. Obviously, last year, the offense was not good enough to win a national championship, which is hard to swallow because Ohio State fans for the previous 4 years before that had seen, or 5 years with Ryan Day as an offense coordinator in 2017 and 18, like the best offenses in the country. So there's pieces that need to be fixed. And the run game, the confidence that Chip Kelly has in the offensive line, the confidence that they're going to have in the quarterback's ability to do things. I was actually thinking about Lincoln Kienholz today as I was asking these questions because he seems fundamentally to be the guy that's different athletically than the others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Chip Kelly actually said he thinks that Aaron Nolan may have the strongest arm on the team, which was something
Really?
I would not have expected him to say.
Oh, good for Aaron.
And, you know, but Lincoln athletically is so different that you don't know if maybe he's going to be the right fit for what they want in this offense, but you can see him growing as a quarterback, which is the important thing. And maybe it won't be here in the long term of his career, but like he's going to be a special quarterback somewhere, and he's benefiting big time from learning this stuff now.
He did actually address that part earlier today where he was like, well, we're all competing. We know that there's 5 of us, and we all feel like we're getting competitive enough and good enough and productive enough that we can be a really good starting quarterback at Ohio State or anywhere in the country.
Yeah.
Like
that's life.
That's reality.
That's
I actually appreciate hearing it that way. Like that's the right approach.
Yeah, and it is in no way suggesting that anyone has like an eye out the door or is thinking about like they're pretty locked in here from everything that I can tell, but that is the world that they live in. And honestly, like if you have that in the back of your mind, I feel like that makes you more competitive in practice, right? Like everything is recorded, everything is videotaped. If the time comes for you to go someplace else and someone says, all right, can we get some practice film? You don't want to suck on your practice film. So like I think like
you're competing to the metaphorical death.
Understanding the realities of being a quarterback in college football in 2024 and then channeling that the right way, I think these guys are doing that.
Well, it's think about to take that Jim Knowles expression from Friday, like they're all chasing perfection. In this case, they want to be the starting quarterback at Ohio State. And if you don't get it, you might have a pretty prominent job somewhere else in the country if you fall short. Like if you're, I think that's a fair goal to have.
Right. And that's not something Ohio State would be mad about. Like the fact is, in recruiting especially, like if Lincoln Kienholz or Devin Brown or Will Howard or Julian Saint ends up being the starting quarterback somewhere else 2 years from now and wins a Heisman, right? And Will Howard can't be. So let's just be clear. He'll be out of
that. Would be wild if he's still playing college football in 2 years.
Like that's good for Ohio State. Like, you know, Joe Burrow, the conversation around Joe Burrow is still lasting around here. Like, yes, he won the national championship in the Heisman at LSU, but there's no doubt that Joe Burrow gives Ohio State credit for what he did, and it had positive ramifications on the recruiting trail. So the more big-time quarterbacks that are coming in here unafraid to compete, the better.
Yeah, and I think there was a chance. I think we've done this long enough that like we could pick up on whether or not like guys were sort of like uncomfortable in their position or upset about something or not liking the fact that there are 5 here and having to go through all that. Like I didn't pick up on any of that. Like I even Air.
Nobody sounded like Dallin Hayden in the spring.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. So
to put a pretty fine point on it.
Yeah. It seems like the room's in a really good spot competitively, and I think just sort of like man to man and how they're trying to help each other.
Was there anything else offensively, big picture, not quarterbacks, that you heard from Chip Kelly or anybody else today that caught attention?
These quarterbacks feel more confident behind the offensive line.
Yes.
That's what they said. And I take their word for it. Nobody knows better than them.
Yeah, and Chip gave the offensive line a pretty strong endorsement too. Is he going to sit down and say, like, these guys aren't good enough? No. But again, if he was BSing about them, I think we'd be able to pick up on it, and I don't believe that he is.
Yeah, you don't have to lie.
You can just
say nothing.
Right. So It's
not UCLA. We're actually going to pay attention to it.
It's more good reports about the group that everyone was worried about coming into this camp. So it seems like they're putting some good practices together.
And we heard from 5 quarterbacks for practice number 5 for Ohio State. Put that one in the bank for the Buckeyes. And another snap judgments is done from the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. That's Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. We'll talk to you again tomorrow on The Daily. See ya.